Hey there. Today we're going to learn about patterns. And patterns is simply a list of numbers or figures or symbols that follow some sort of a rule. And generally, it's our job to figure out what the rule is so that we could either continue the pattern or name the next few terms in a pattern. So here I have an example of a pattern of shapes. And again, I'm looking for similarities between these shapes. And what I'm noticing in this case is a repetition of these three shapes that are popping up over and over again. My repetition is one square followed by two circles. So I want to check to see, do the other terms in this pattern fit that rule, so that I can definitely say that my rule is 1 squared followed by 2 circles. So I look at the next three terms in the pattern, and again I see the same thing. I see 1 square followed by 2 circles. Continuing on, I see what would be continuing with that pattern, which is another 1 square and 1 circle. If I were asked to continue the pattern, well, I know that I would need one more circle to continue the pattern, followed by a square, and then 2 circles, and on and on. But patterns aren't always made with just shapes. Quite often we can see numbers form patterns as well. Here I have two examples of two different patterns. And the way that I'm going to look to determine what pattern I see is I want to look at what the numbers are doing. In this case, all of my numbers are getting larger, from 3 to 7 to 11 to 15 to 19 to 23. Each number got a little larger than the number before it. If my numbers are getting larger, well, one of two things is happening. I'm either adding a number or I'm multiplying by a number. In this pattern, we see my numbers are getting smaller, from 50 to 45, and each term is smaller than the term before it. If my numbers are getting smaller as they go on, I know again I'm doing one of two things. I'm either subtracting numbers or I'm dividing numbers. And again, the only way to determine what the pattern is to see what changes from number to number. Well, since my numbers in this case are getting larger, I know I'm either adding or multiplying something. So how would I get from 3 to 7? Well, I would have to add 4. Let's see if that rule continues for my other terms. 7 to 11, I also had to add 4. To get from 11 to 15, I added 4 again. To get from 15 to 19, I added 4, and to get from 19 to 23, I also had to add 4. So I know that my rule for this set of numbers is to add 4 to the term before it. If I wanted to continue this pattern, I would simply add 4 to 23, which would give me 27. Then I would add 4 to 27, which would give me 31. And I could continue for as long as the pattern asked me to continue. Over here, I saw that my numbers were getting smaller, so I'm going to say I'm either subtracting something or dividing by something. To get from 50 to 45, I didn't divide by anything, but I did subtract 5. To get from 45 to 40, I also had to subtract 5. To get from 40 to 35, I subtracted 5, and from 35 to 30, I also subtracted 5. So definitively, I can say that my rule in this set of numbers is subtract 5. And if I were asked to continue the terms in this sequence, I would subtract 5 from the previous term. So 30 minus 5 is 25, 25 minus 5 is 20, 20 minus 5 is 15, and I could continue on for however long the pattern asked me to continue. It's really important when determining patterns that we actually see that the rule applies for all terms involved. So for instance, in this case, if I'm looking to see what happened between 2 and 4, Well, I could say that I added 2 to get from 2 to 4, but I could also say that I also multiplied by 2 to get from 2 to 4. 2 times 2 would give me 4. So in order to determine what the pattern is, it has to be true for each term in the sequence. So when I go from 4 to 8, I see that I didn't add 2, instead I added 4. So that wouldn't be my pattern. But to get from 4 to 8, I could also multiply by 2. So that would be my actual pattern if it continues on for the other terms. To get from 8 to 16, I also multiply by 2. And to get from 16 to 32, I also multiplied by 2. So if I wanted to continue this pattern on, I would have to take 32 and multiply it by 2, which would give me 64. If I wanted to continue on, I would take 64 and multiply it by 2, which would give me 128, and continued on with the pattern for however long the problem asked me to continue. Some patterns are a little bit more complicated than just one rule. Some patterns have multiple rules. So in this case, I see numbers going up and I see numbers going down. So I know that there must be some combination of adding and subtracting or multiplying and dividing. So let's take a look at my numbers and see how they change. To get from 39 to 40, I had to add 1. But to get from 40 to 36, I'm actually taking numbers away. In this case, I'm subtracting 4. So let's see if this pattern continues as I go on. To get from 36 to 37, I also had to add 1. And then to get from 37 to 33, I had to subtract 4. From 33 to 34, I added 1. So my rule is really add 1 and subtract 4. So if I were continuing on with my terms, the next term would be subtracting 4. 34 minus 4 would give me 30. If I continued on, I'd have to add 1. 30 plus 1 would give me 31. So I need to make sure that I am paying attention to, does the rule apply all the way down the pattern? And what do I need to do to continue the pattern correctly?